Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome into the show tonight. I'm Jessica Jones. I'm the Cryptid Huntress, and I am so glad that you guys are here. I'm already seeing all you guys in that chat tonight. Thank y'all so much for being here. Man, we have such a great show tonight. We have our friend, Mark Machek here in the studio tonight. You guys might know him as Cryptidville. He's oftentimes in the chats, and he has been my guest here on my channel. We've talked about his encounters at around the Land Between the Lakes area in Kentucky. He does live in Kentucky, and he's had some interesting cryptid experiences. And tonight we're going to be talking about one of those in particular that we've actually kind of talked about a little bit before. But we're going to dive into the fact that Dogman was wearing paint on its face. And I think that that's a very interesting phenomenon. And I think that it's very important that we as cryptid field researchers, he and I both, get into the significance of that, what it means, what is the symbolism of that? I mean, what are the implications, okay, of cryptids wearing tribal dress, war paint potentially, or even just camouflaging their faces with paint? Okay, so if you guys would like to follow along with all of my shows and everything that I'm doing, you guys please go to my website. That's thecryptidhuntress.com. You can find all of my shows there and all of the events that I'm going to be at and much more on that website. Also, I do have a Patreon if you guys would like to become a member over there. I do post all of my remote viewing data there for my shows that I do on Thursdays and more. Okay, you can become a free member or you can become a paying member and get access to all that data. So also, I do have a shop, and I want to say a huge thank you to everybody who's been buying or purchasing things out of my shop. A huge thank you to you guys. That's a big deal to me. So thank you. Anybody who makes a purchase in my shop, it's called War Woman Goods on Etsy. You get free merch, Cryptid Huntress merch with every purchase. So you guys head on over to Etsy and check out my shop. Okay. And thank you for all your support. Okay. Well, let's get into our show tonight because I don't want to waste any time as normal. Okay. And let me give you a little bit of a background on what we're going to talk about and on our guest tonight, Mark Machek. Okay. So we're going to be discussing his encounter at the Land Between the Lakes in Kentucky. And, yeah, we're also going to be exploring the encounters with other humanoids and cryptids that are adorned in tribal outfits and war paint. And this is not as uncommon as you guys might think. Okay. As a matter of fact, I had a back and forth this morning with William Nighthawk, who's a dear friend of mine. And he, oh, and Eric's in the chat too. He and Eric, hey, Eric, I see him. They have a podcast on Saturday or Sunday mornings called, I think it's Weekend Morning Brew, okay? And it's with William and Eric. And he talked a little bit. He knew that I was going to be doing the show tonight. And he talked about the indigenous connections to the Dogmen and potentially why they may have paint on their faces and things like that. We're going to get into that tonight, okay? Now, Mark Machek became interested in the paranormal, cryptids, and UFOs because of the things that he had experienced, and he embarked on a journey to understand the mysteries of the world. He also lives very close to the Land Between the Lakes and has had a lot of experiences out there. So please help me welcome to the show tonight, my buddy, Cryptidville, Mark Machek. Hey, Mark.
Hi, Jessica. Thank you for having me on.
Hey, of course. This is our second weekend in a row hanging out. I love it. Yeah. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored that you feel that I have enough knowledge about this subject to hold some discussion about it for a little bit.
Oh yeah, you do. Well, your story is mesmerizing to me, and we talked about your encounter with a dogman I think it was near the LBL, and you were talking about how not only did it kind of disappear as it backed away when it got into your line of vision, but you noticed something very different about it, as though you thought it was a deer, but then you noticed it like it had paint smeared down its neck and on its face. Now, I'd really enjoy you telling me that story again tonight. Just tell me about the encounter and exactly what you saw so that we can kind of get into the discussion about the face paint and the war paint on cryptids.
Okay. So, for those who aren't aware or haven't heard the story in the past, so basically, I went into an area that was a field that had a drainage that ran through the field, and on the edge of that drainage there was some woods, and people hunted in that particular piece of woods, myself included. So I went in there and was looking for basically deer tracks, and I had taken a camera with me. So I walked up this drain area in the middle of the field to the edge of the woods on the far side of the field. And interestingly, I did not find any deer tracks. So I turned around and I was coming back down. And when I got down to where it widened out, the field widened out and kind of became less wooded. Um, I had stopped and was looking around, and out of nowhere, I got this feeling that I was not alone. I mean, I'm standing in the middle of a field, so I was looking around, and the the area that I had looked at, uh, which would have been to my left as I was heading back, it had some sparse trees, and it was an inclined area that went up. I would say maybe a 35-degree incline from where I was to the top of the hill. And there were some trees and some bushes. And interestingly, when I was looking up in there, I noticed this one bush that was kind of out in the middle of the wide open. And uh, at first, I thought I was looking at what I thought was a deer because it looked like a deer behind the bush, just looking directly at me. Because when a deer is looking at you dead on, they have a white patch under the bottom of their neck, and that's what I thought I was looking at. So I'm standing there and I'm looking at this deer, and all of a sudden it turned its head slightly like this, about the position I have my head in currently, and I could see the side profile of this thing's face, and it was a long muzzle. I could see canine ears and the coyote slash wolfish type head. And the weird thing about it, um, it almost had a cartoonish kind of look to it. And that's one thing that a lot of people that encounter Dogman relate. And anyways, the interesting thing about this, when it turned its head and I could see its muzzle, it looked like to me as if you would take your hands and dip your fingers into white paint and run that paint down the side of its muzzle. That's what it looked like this thing had done, because I could see visible stripes. They were wide, but they were visible. And there were areas where you could see it was like finger marks. And um, I was like kind of astounded and thinking to myself, man, I've got to get a picture of this. And I had the camera in my hand, but I had it off. So when I went to turn it on, I hit the power button, and I didn't instantly pull it up like this and gonna take a picture. I just hit the power button, and when I hit the power button, this thing ducked down behind this bush. And I was like, okay, it's in the wide open. Where's it going? It's got to pop up somewhere. So I was standing there looking. I was waiting for it to pop up somewhere, and actually, what I observed at that point was it was on its belly, not like a spider crawl, but like a human would crawl, but it was crawling away from that bush. And the craziest part about it was as it was crawling, when it got down to its legs, and just to give everyone a clarification as to what it looked like, imagine, if you will, a humanish or Bigfoot type body with a wolf head is what this thing looked like. It wasn't like a Van Helsing type dog man. But as this thing was crawling away, I observed it. I don't know how it was doing this. I have no explanation for it other than it was some kind of technology it was using to cloak itself or turn itself invisible, change its vibration, whatever. I don't know. But I watched it in stages up its leg from the sole of its feet start to disappear in plain view, but I could still see the outline of its feet and calf, but it was slowly moving up its leg. Um, so it crawled out of my view, and I never did see it again after that. And then I was like, okay, it's starting to get dark. It's time for me to get out of here because one, it's a dog man. Two, it's trying to make itself invisible, and I don't want to be out here in the dark where I'm at a sight disadvantage because it's dark and this thing is potentially invisible. So I was like, it's time for me to go. So that was pretty much the the gist of the uh, that particular sighting.
Okay, so you were thinking at first that you were seeing a deer, and I did
That is
show the
correct.
audience. Well, I showed the audience. So I pulled up a couple of pictures of deer that are kind of hiding in the bush. Something so the audience could get kind of an idea of what you thought you were looking at. And listen, deers are masters of camouflage when it comes to being in the bush like that. It's kind of hard to see. It's obviously hard to see them, but there's that white tuft of that spot on their neck right there. And I mean, I know this is like a painting, but it's just kind of more up close kind of view of what you thought you were looking at. So what color was the creature? It was a light brown or like a brownish color that and it had like the like paint on its face.
So as far as its head, aside from that white spot or the white paint on its muzzle, it was um, probably in the coloration range of like a coyote or um, like a timber wolf kind of color is pretty much what it looked like. More coyote, because coyotes they have interspersed black and brown, dark brown
Hmm.
in their coat, and it's not real. It's not real. Like you don't have real defined marks like you would in some wolves. But yeah, it for the most part was a natural color to some type of canine.
Wow. Well, what when you realized that whatever this creature was that you were looking at, and I know your mind was racing 100 miles an hour because not only are you seeing something that's not supposed to exist, I'm sure your brain is trying to make sense of it all, but then you're watching it disappear right before your eyes simultaneously. So I know it had to have been jarring for you, but when you had time to actually get your thoughts together, what do you think the paint was about? It was just camouflage, or, and I think we can get into this conversation tonight, was it just for camouflage only, or could it have been ceremonial or tribal or war paint of some sort?
Well, I think it was. I honestly uh, think that it was kind of a multi-purpose type scenario. For a long time, I hadn't looked into the significance of, um, war paint. I mean, everybody's heard that Native Americans use war paint and face paintings and different different paintings. I mean, they paint their own horses, and they utilize symbols and stuff like that on their animals. And some might think that they're just pretty decorations, but these things actually have very specific meanings.
Mhm.
And even down to certain colors have certain meanings. And they're used as a form of communication, actually, within Native American tribes. Now, I think it's important that we look at the scenario of, you know, we know that Native Americans use war paint and have all these symbols that they use. And we've got more than, I don't know how many reports there are of people encountering dogmen or cryptids in general, that have paint on them. But if you have more than one, then you have to ask, where did that uh, where did that creature learn to do that? And is it a scenario of it learned it through observation of the Native Americans, or did the Native Americans learn this practice from these Bigfoot creatures? And
Mm.
interestingly, if you go back to the scenario of medicine people, there's um, a lot of the tribes, you know, relate that their medicine people are actually trained by um, the and each tribe has a different word for them, but the little people, they're trained in their practices. So, you know, is there a connection there one way or the other, or is it a learned thing, or is it that the Bigfoot and Dogman learned from the Native Americans, or did they both learn from the Fae, or did how did that knowledge come into play? But I think it even goes back further than that, because there is, and if you look at the connections, uh, to the biblical narrative, you know, when the fallen angels came down, they taught men obviously things that men were not supposed to know. And interestingly, one of those was magic and magical rites, and occult practices. And
Yeah.
interestingly, and this is where uh, I'm only going to mention this as an affront, or to bring it into a possible source of this knowledge. But they even taught humans about makeup and you know stuff like that. So where did all of it originate, I guess, is the question that I'm looking at. So I think that there is a point of origin. Where exactly it is, I'm not sure, but it is interesting that you have these uh, dogmen and Bigfoot creatures that are using these things, and then you have the Native Americans that are using them as well. And with them being, so defined as on the Native American side, I think there is a significance. Um, but you know,
I think there is too, Mark. And I got to tell you, I put on my war paint every day. Okay. Did I told you it was funny because right before we were going live, I was like, well, I just got done putting on my war paint myself. And that's what I call it. It's either clown makeup or war paint. It depends on how I'm feeling. Okay.
well, the
But
the interesting the interesting thing about that, if you look at the Native American uh, war paint, it was used for um, the purposes of tapping into. what they refer to as natural magic.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of people don't believe in magic. They don't believe that magic is real and that it's just something that's made up. But I mean, if you if the Bible talks about magic, then I mean, how much more proof do you need that magic at some level is real? So, anyways, I think that it's important to understand that there is a magical aspect to all of these things, and how or why these creatures might be using them. Who knows? Maybe there's some kind of connection
I think
between
so.
the
Absolutely. Oh, sorry.
between I was I was gonna
You
uh,
took a
uh,
long pause. I took it upon myself to interject.
so what I was gonna say is maybe there's a connection between it having this face paint and its ability to disappear and
Melissa?
phase
Yeah.
like it was doing. I mean, because I mean, if you look at the the etymology, if you will, of uh, you know, the uses of war paint in magic, or paint and symbols in Native American magic.
Yeah.
Um, there is a mental preparation aspect to it as well that um, basically comes into play with getting that individual into a different mindset, which, as you know, changes your vibration.
Oh, and that's what I talk about all the time is changing your vibrational frequency. And that's where we get into the conversation about shape-shifting and skinwalkers and things like that. Before we go further, War Criminal 7, thank you so much for that super sticker. Yeah, Mark is a great guy. He's a great friend and very credible. So thank you for that. That's awesome. Um, yeah, so sigils and things. I'm not saying that some of these markings and things are are sigils, but I pulled up a picture of the horse, and it's a diagram. Okay, this is a diagram, and it kind of tells you like what some of the symbols mean. I mean, I would think that this would be kind of the equivalent of writing something like a maybe like a power symbol or some sort of a sigil to give the horse some extra power or some extra protection spiritually when you're riding off into battle or some kind of dispute or whatever's going on. You need that extra protection. You need your horse to be protected. It's sacred. So sacred symbols, I guess.
I believe that there is a connection with that, and that it is part of their belief structure that you know supernatural abilities can be bestowed upon that. And we might as well go ahead and acknowledge that it is a form of sigil magic, because
Hmm.
at the end of the day, that's what it is. Not necessarily for nefarious purposes, but for the purposes of, like you said, sending these animals to battle, or to do whatever they're going to do.
Yeah. Um, okay. Well, here's something very interesting that I heard earlier today. And I had mentioned that my friend William Nighthawk and Eric, who's in the chat tonight, had done a show this afternoon, and he addressed this. Kind of on when he saw that I was doing the show, he'd let me know that he was going to address this during his show. So he wanted to put the information out there so that we'd have it. So people like ourselves, who are doing all this research, there just seems to be some like missing links that I have been unaware of, and I've been spinning my wheels trying to figure out why some things are the way they are. Okay, like why are dogmen often spotted at Indian burial mounds, in cemeteries? There's a whole lot of discussion as to why. Well, he talked about that today, and on his show with Eric, and he was. It has a lot to do, according to what he said, it has a lot to do with curses and blessings. Okay. And I'm the kind of person, I think you are too, Mark, where good and bad is relative. Good and evil is relative. Okay. And and there has to be like a duality to life in a lot of ways too. So something that we see as a curse could be a blessing to somebody else. Okay. And so it comes down to blessings and curses and the land. Okay. And the ancestry, and let's just say maybe perhaps what he was saying was that at places like where you had your sighting at the land between the lakes or around that area, there was a cemetery that was tampered with that had indigenous burial. It was an indigenous burial site, and I believe that some of the graves had been, I want to say, desecrated, potentially removed or moved, and so potentially that could be why that land is, dare I say, cursed. And maybe there are beings, and what he was saying, cryptids, dogmen, Sasquatch, reptilians, any kind of elemental spirit, shapeshifters, uh, can be basically summoned to protect that land, okay, and to either curse it or bless it. And so that may be the cause of a lot of that activity, and maybe even what you saw could have stemmed from that.
I would have to to agree with you on that because I personally know of at least two Native American burial sites that were excavated and relocated
Okay.
from their original locations, and I also know of um, some people that basically went into artifact hunt in a not ethical way
Hmm.
um, at some Native American burial sites within the land between the lakes. Very unfortunate, um, and very very sad. Um, I I w- I have to tell you the story about how I learned of that, but it's not anything that we should share here.
Okay.
So anyways, but yeah, I think there is a connection. Um, and if you look at, speaking of the LBL in general, this whole area, and I've heard people talk about it and not really have the information or have done the research. But at one point in time, this area was owned by the Shawnee, and the information that I came across was that there was a deal that was going to take place between the Shawnee and some settlers for the purchase of some of the land, and basically the Shawnee were taken advantage of immensely within that deal. Basically, got shafted, and as a result of that, um, they uh, placed supposedly curses upon the land because of that.
Mm, that would make sense. That's what William was saying today. That and it's not something that he said that the medicine men, the medicine women in modern day have no intention of hurting people. Okay, but the land is sacred and it needs to be protected, and they will call on elementals to protect the land. And we can look at it as cursing it or blessing it. Okay, and so it keeps people away, okay, from a lot of this, and I'm sure they will hurt you as well. The elementals, the beings that are out there, have the power to hurt us if need be. But it sounded to me, okay, so I personally, coming from a field researcher's perspective, and I spent a lot of time out in the woods, um, I have not yet been run out of a place. Okay, not yet. Um, Doesn't mean it won't happen. Okay, it doesn't mean it won't happen. But he also said that if you're meant to see one, if they want you to see them, like you had that experience seeing that dog man that had the paint on it, then you were meant to see it. Okay, that was an experience that you were meant to have. It meant for you to see it. Not everybody has, I'm going to say, the honor of seeing things like this and the privilege, because I think it is kind of a privilege to be able to communicate or to just communicate or to experience that.
Well, I there was a time when I believed that, and I have I have had experiences where I've been in large groups where, 5 or 10 people out of the group could see something that the other people that are in the group can't. So, I mean, how does that work? I don't know, but
Vibrational frequency.
yeah, that would be the only way that I could say that that would
Yeah.
work. And some people are tuned into that frequency or can perceive that vibration where others can't. And um, yeah, it's a very interesting concept. But yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence about, whether interacting with these things is 100% blessing or curse. I'm kind of in the neutral area, to be honest,
Yeah.
because, I hear about all these, you know, t- terrible attacks, and I hear about these good interactions. So
Right.
what is it, And that's another thing that has been a long standing part of my research is looking into why these things do the things that they do. And yeah, so that's something that's going to be another topic to get into at a later time,
Okay.
because the research is, you know, I
Ongoing.
don't yeah, it's ongoing, and I don't want to present things that are untested. That's like the whole shofar thing, you know. I mean, the reality
Oh,
of that scenario is if if things had went the way that I had anticipated it to go,
okay.
um,
Wait, before you go further, can you explain to the audience what you're talking about? Because I don't think it. We've never discussed that on my channel before.
okay.
Can you just
So
briefly kind of go over it?
yeah, I'll briefly touch
Okay.
on it. So
Thank you.
basically back in 2007, I started looking at the whole cryptid thing, the whole topic as a from a different perspective than a lot of people were looking at it. And I was asking questions that nobody at that time was asking. Like as an example, if these things can turn themselves invisible at will, either through the use of technology or a vibrational change, there is a transference of energy,
Yeah.
and that should be able to be detected somehow by some type of device. And that's just one example of some of the different things that I was, questioning. If that's possible, then we should be able to pick up on that.
Yeah.
So, along with that, um, uh, at that time, when I started asking those questions, I had heard, um, the whisperings that there may be a connection between some of these things and the Nephilim. So, but at that point, there wasn't anybody publicly talking about it.
Right.
So I took because I wanted to understand um, these things that I was encountering. I took it upon myself to start studying, and in an attempt to learn more about the possible explanations for these things. And in that, one of the things that I came across was the whole concept of uh, being able to call these things in
Mhm.
by utilizing a shofar.
Which is a horn, right?
Yeah,
Um,
which it,
like a
it is a kudu ram's horn.
okay.
So and s- so I think it's important for everyone to understand a few things about that. And the first thing is, you know, I sat on that information for a long time. I mean, I was looking at it way back then, and because of the fact that I live, here pretty close to the LBL, and I don't, because of work and everyday life, I don't really travel around to different research areas. I took it, the chance, and I shared that research, some of it, with someone because of the fact that I knew that that individual was traveling around to different locations and was in a position to basically test the theory. And even though I didn't intend for that information to be publicly released, it was under whatever circumstances that was. So that's pretty much the the nutshell version of that.
Well,
And
that I don't mean to interrupt. That could be very dangerous. Knowing about portal activity and I've seen a video of a guy who was doing throat singing, and he seemed to attract a crowd. Okay, when he was out in the woods doing his throat singing, and it seemed to open up a portal, and all these little cryptids were creeping up behind him in the woods and stuff, like potentially Bigfoot. And so and audacious Amber has a comment. She said they're blowing Aztec death whistles out in the LBL. Now I did see a post about that, and I know there's been some activity. The LBL attracts a crowd, okay, because it's pretty popular from the Beast of LBL stories, and so there's a lot of people that want to go there for experiences. Okay, and do you think that that is very safe for people to be doing things? Because if things are opening portals, shouldn't they know how to shut the portal down as well? And I'm not saying they don't, or whoever they are. Okay, but what else does this entail? Okay, when it comes to the shofar and death whistles.
well, as far as the shofar goes, the magnitude or extent that everything goes to with that, um, we we don't know its full capability, and because we don't know its full capability, um, that's what makes it extremely dangerous. I do know that um, that it will open portals, and um, that was basically something I experienced firsthand. And when that happened, I was like, "No, I gotta go." I was like, I'm leaving,"
Yeah,
because if you open something like that, you have no control over what comes through it.
that's right. Well, and just like in just about any kind of magical practice, especially because when it comes down to it, I personally would consider that to be a magical instrument if it's opening a portal. Okay, I'm just saying. I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of things are magical. Okay, but
Well,
that. that could be considered a magical musical instrument, because what it's doing is it's hitting a frequency, which is tapping into something ethereal and opening up portals to other dimensions potentially.
Well, the thing with it is, and I'm sure you know this, that there are several words that we use: magical, paranormal, supernatural. Those are words that we made to explain things that we don't understand, and to make ourselves feel better about being able to possibly, convey the thing that we experienced. And I believe that, just because we don't understand, how these things work, that doesn't mean that they're not at some point going to be understood. So, but yeah, I agree, um, that there is um, a lot of potential, and there are things that I've grown to understand about the whole shofar thing. That, um, well, at the end of the day, my advice is don't do it. That would be my best advice. And um, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it was a novel idea in the beginning, but I was shown later on that it was not actually a good thing to do at the end of the day, because of the fact that you're using something that was intended for one purpose as another purpose, just like war paint.
Yeah.
I mean, it has so many different purposes, but I mean, uh, I
Yeah.
don't know. I'm kind of merged in between two different topics here. I know, but
Okay. Okay. Well, let me throw in an extra one. Let's just go all in. Okay. So we got. Okay, so William Nighthawk is in the chat. Thank you so much for being here, William. Okay, so William's in the chat right now, and what he was talking about this morning was there have been creatures, let's just say, potentially shapeshifters, um, kind of summoned or brought into places like the LBL to protect that land, to protect that sacred land there. And they may not be so nice over there where the land, the graves have been desecrated. Um, maybe that explains some of this activity. Um, but oh gosh, I don't know exactly where to go with this right now because there's so many different directions we could go in. But okay, so we've got all this going on. Like there have been creatures that have been, I'm going to say summoned, okay, or just brought in, elementals potentially, to protect the sacred land. They're already pissed off. Okay, they're already there. Maybe they're not pissed off. They're just there to protect it by any means necessary, and that's what William said today. Okay, by any means necessary. And then you have an element of people coming in, stirring up the pot, stirring up the energies. Okay, and I've never been to the land between the lakes, and I've never been. I've been to other areas that have probably just as much activity, but it doesn't get the press that that place does. Okay, but you've got a really like a perfect storm for potential disaster out there, in my opinion. But because we've got all these frequency horns and whistles being blown, you're having people opening portals. You even have occult activity going on at the land between the lakes, and I've heard that repeatedly going on out there. And so I'm not saying that all the dogmen are conjured or there are werewolves being conjured. There's anything being conjured, but there could be at this point. So I mean, this is one of your research areas too, and you live in that area. Um, I mean, do you feel safe being out there when you go? And do you go alone?
well, I'm going to get into that a little bit here. Um, in my early research years, I would go over there by myself. I've spent many, 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 many hours over there by myself because I couldn't find anybody that was brave enough to go with me. because the place had such a reputation. And um, because of the things that I've seen and encountered, I do not go over there generally by myself. Not anymore. And to take it a step further, you know, back in uh, probably 2005 when I started researching over there actively all the time, probably before that, there weren't a lot of people that were researching over there, and um, it was kind of like a undisturbed uh, location, and it's gotten to the point now where I've had so much, seen so much press, and I'm not going to call names, but there's one podcaster that puts videos up. Oh, every video it's person killed in the LBL, person stalked in the LBL. You know,
Does that happen
every
though?
video.
I mean, are there people getting stalked and taken down there every all the time?
No,
Because I
no.
don't hear that many stories. I mean, I've heard a couple. There's like two or three stories of potentially attacks there, but for the most part, when I hear a dogman story, they're not always like violent.
So I'm going to mention something. So my friend War Criminal mentioned my background. So I think this is very important. And I'm going to mention this, and this is if you don't get anything else out of this show, I hope that that everybody gets this one thing that I'm fixing to get into. So I chose this background, the animated Matrix background, for the simple reason that we talk about being locked into the Matrix, and the Matrix is real, and you know the Borg wants everybody to be locked into it. Well, the interesting thing about it is this: it's not just the government, the Borg, or whatever that wants us to be locked in the Matrix. We have counterparts in our own community that their goal is for us to be locked in the Matrix and not question anything that they put out or say, or any of the evidence that they produce. They want us to be blinded by whatever it is that we're being spoon fed, to take whatever they say is the truth and not ever question it. And I I don't necessarily agree with that mindset. That mindset and myself do not coexist. It is not in my universe. I question everything and trust very few people. And that's something that's come into existence because of you know being involved in the community. And yes, I know I'm not very well known. I'm not a household name like some people out there, but I know all those people. I've researched with all those people for the most part, and I've been around a lot of them. And I'm not I'm not up here to denigrate anyone or call anybody a liar, hoax, or whatever you want to call it. But my encouragement to everyone would be to question everything. And if they're not willing to put in time to do good research, and I know, it's the popular thing to go out and say, "Oh, I went to my research area this weekend and I caught this, and I present it on YouTube, and I present it in this, speech at a conference or whatever." But if they're not willing to sit back and say, "Okay, I found this," and they're not willing to sit on it and see if the same thing is going on somewhere else, or is there a correlation with that to this, and to formulate a big picture or even a small picture of what a particular piece of evidence could put in there. I mean, a prime example, I'll go ahead and tell you this. One of the big things when I was looking at the Bigfoot Nephilim connection was, you know, through epigenetics, I think that it's possible that these beings may be attempting or utilizing a form of natural magic. Now, we have these people all across the world, all across the country, that are finding these stick structure glyphs, whatever you want to call them, and you know they're taking note of them, documenting them, and all of that, which is fine. It is a good thing to utilize to get to a possible hypothesis of what you're looking into. So early on, when I was looking at this, I contacted a very well named, well known researcher in another country who spends a lot of time in the U.S. And I was like, hey, I noticed that in your postings on Facebook, you have all these stick structures and glyphs that you found in Russia. And I wanted to encourage you to take that information and kind of create like a database, if you will, and run a comparison between those structures that you're finding and ancient hermetical or magical symbols to see if there's any kind of correlation. You know what the response was?
No,
Crickets.
I
Crickets.
bet. Well, you bring the word magic into the mix, Mark. When you bring the word magic in, it changes the conversation, and people are scared of that word. I think they're scared of it. Okay, and I mean, okay, so well, I guess I talk about stick structures sometimes, but not a whole lot, because I've come across my share of things like that in the woods, and I'm always the person that's like, well, yeah, a camper could have done that or something, but that doesn't mean they
Oh yeah.
did. But there are glyphs and things that absolutely there has to be a connection. That's why I love having conversations like this, just to think outside the box and to bust out of this matrix. It's not just TP structures. Okay, there could be, it's like crop circles, right? Even in crop circles, those could be messages to humanity. It's a form of communication. And so we have to think about stuff like that. And when you're making these connections and when we are sharing our research, I did wait 10 years to go. I didn't go public with my research for over 10 years. And I never meant to go public, but I was working, and I still do. I go out and do field research with people from all over the country, all over the United States. And we are still doing research. And you guys will, I brought a few of my teammates on my shows. They come on once or twice, but you guys will never see them. They're not names that are well known because they're not public, but they're doing the research. I can promise you that, and they're getting a lot of results from it as well. So I love that you're saying this. I love it. I think that you're right, Mark. I
Well,
think you're
it's
right.
not, to me, it's not, and thank you for the compliment, but in all honesty, it's been my experience that it's not always about being right,
Yeah,
because
that's right.
you don't have to be right. You just have to you just have to be able to formulate a hypothesis and know how that works. Because if you don't, then you're
Yeah,
just you're just putting information out there that may or may not be valid,
that's true.
and nobody knows. So in my opinion, that is not necessarily a good thing. Now, the realm that I operate in is more of, you know, I guess, I don't know if I'm gonna pull up a hypothetical example, and I'm just gonna say if I saw a Bigfoot going through somebody's bag and he pulls out a Reese cup and he opens it up and he eats it, but there's other candy in there that he doesn't eat. Let's say there's a Snickers bar and a Milky Way and some other. If I observe that Bigfoot doing that, I don't think that I would, you know, unless I was able to document it with video or photos or whatever. And even then, I probably wouldn't come out public with it. But if I wanted to use that and say, well, do these things have a affinity for Reese cups?
I
And do they?
Everybody does, don't they? I do. They must be. You know what they are? They're a parent. Okay, they're a mom. They're a mom. You could what do you call that character? What do you do? Profiling. Character profiling. Like a forensic profiling off of what
Yeah.
I mean. Seriously, you have to think like that when you're a field like a researcher like that. Um, I mean, it's always the parents that are grabbing that. We're not grabbing the Starburst out of our kids' Halloween buckets. We're grabbing the Reese's Buttercups after they go to bed. Okay, on Halloween.
But
So anyway,
it I guess the whole point of that example is, in my opinion, if you're gonna use that in your research, I think, I mean, if you wanna come out with it and put it up on YouTube and whatever,
yeah,
um, go for it, but if you're gonna use it in your research, I think it's important to to hold on to it for a little while and see if there's, like, a correlation in another location, or if you are able to reproduce that, which, the scientific theory uh, is r- r- is made relevant by being able to reproduce the same thing multiple times. And if you can do that, then you can say Bigfoot likes Reese's Cups over Snickers bars or whatever. I mean,
yeah.
and I think that's that's one of the big things that you know I guess at the end of the day, the community, in my opinion, is gone towards and don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with telling stories, and even fabricated stories, fictional stories. It's gone that direction, and that's not necessarily a good thing for people that are trying to do actual real research. Because there's things that I've experienced, you know that nobody even knows about, and that's because at some point I might need to use that. I like that, become an asshole.
An asshole. That was Sovereign Cosmic Wildman. What's up? I know. An asshole. There's nothing wrong with being an asshole. Yeah, we gotta ask questions. We gotta question everything too. I think it's important. Question it, look into stuff. Um, yeah, I had just pulled up a comment from William. He said that the land between the lakes has been cursed for what was that, 200 years or something like that. I mean, here it is. The land between the lakes has been cursed during the Trail of Tears and multiple times over the past 200 years. So there's a lot of probably pretty dense energies there. In addition to, I mean, have you ever felt a presence of like pure evil when you've been out there? To ask.
Yeah,
I'm going to be
yeah,
an asshole.
yeah, I have, actually. Um, um, Myself and War Criminal, we went into a location middle of the day, and we got we basically decided it was a good idea for us to depart that location, because of the what happened while we were there. Very, very uneasy feeling, and I've had that that happen multiple times in different locations, and yeah,
Yeah.
there
Okay.
there are many locations around here like that.
I have a question. Have you heard any other reports of anyone else from your research area encountering a cryptid or a humanoid of any form wearing paint on its face?
No, I've not heard of anyone around here encountering anything similar, even to what I've experienced with that one dog man. And interestingly, one of the things uh, that I had happen one day. Uh, I used to be a big time bow hunter, and Um, I went into this location to hunt one morning, and I got in there before daylight, and I decided that I was going to sit down on a stump and just see what came through the draw that I was in. And I had been there. It started getting daylight, and it was full on daylight. And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, I hear human footsteps, and I'm like, "Oh crap! Somebody's in here." The typical things that who's walking in on me. So I'm sitting there, and I look up, and of all things, it was not a human. It was actually a doe deer, and this is the strangest thing I've ever seen. And I watched her do it. She was walking, and when she would walk, she would take her front feet, and when she would move her leg forward, she would drag it through the leaves, and it would reproduce the sound of a human walking perfectly. And
Wow. That's adaptive
and
offense.
and
It's like, what?
the other part of this scenario that it makes it even more interesting is, as well as I do, that you hear people talk about they go into the woods and they're looking for cryptids or Bigfoot or whatever, and they try to be stealthy, but they're pretty much of the mindset of, well, the heck with it. There's no sense in trying to be stealthy because they're going to know you're there anyways, which is true. They're going to know that you're there, so you might as well not even try to hide yourself when you go in. So that particular area that I was in is a very active Bigfoot area, and is actually a mile from where I saw that dog man that day. So I know that that deer has probably encountered these things. And my question instantly was the deer doing that to try to make itself appear like it was a human, so that, because cryptids or Bigfoot in most accounts, when they're encountered by somebody, it's either the majority of sightings are it turned and went away. Like, it didn't want anything to do with me, and it just turned and went the other direction. So it made sense to me that the deer would try to emulate a human, because if it did, there's a chance that the Bigfoot might go away. So very interesting. I've never seen a deer do that before, but I did see that in that area.
So it sounded like a bipedal person, a human, or something walking on
Hmm.
two legs, 2 feet.
Hmm.
That's
Sure
interesting.
did.
William in the chat said, William Nighthawk said that deers are known to kind of do that sometimes. So, I mean, I've I've never encountered a deer that did that before, but I've seen my share of deers, but I've never spent time. I'm not a hunter, even though I'm the cryptid huntress. I'm out there in the woods looking for Bigfoot in the middle of the night, but I have not encountered a deer doing that. Not once. Not once. But but hey, at least it wasn't walking on its hind legs, right?
Yeah, that would have been like next level stuff there.
I thought that's what you were going to say for a second. I was waiting. I was
No.
on the edge of my seat. You never
Well,
know what you're going to
sorry to
get
let you
out there.
down.
Oh my gosh, yeah, we never know what we're going to get when we're out there in those woods. But see, back then you were just doing bow hunting. You weren't there to do bigfooting, right?
No,
Yeah.
no.
Wow.
But it actually turned out that that particular location is the same location. The first time I ever got ran out of the woods was in that exact location, because I went in there one morning to hunt, and I walked in and I was gonna sit down on the same stump, and I was standing there, and all of a sudden I got this creeped out feeling, and I knew three things. The first thing was that I was not alone. The second thing was that whatever was there didn't want me there. And the third thing was that I needed to leave. And I stood there for a couple minutes and I looked around and then I was like, pew, time to go. I left.
Whoa. I don't blame you. Hey, we got Javier in the chat from Cryptid559. What's up, Javier? He's out near Fresno, California. And he's had his own share of Dogman experiences. And I think Adolf is in the chat as well. Him. He too, they've got a lot of Dogman activity out in California. And this is interesting because he made a comment about there were some people who were walking into our country, let's just say, in the United States, and in a certain area, and they said they came across evil people with feathers and a black painted face, and they would burn humans, is what he says here. So that's interesting. It sounds interesting. You know, I've actually did a show not too terribly long ago with my friend Nick Sylvester, and he has a podcast called The Bridge with Nick and Dylan over on Rumble, and he was talking about I titled it "Terror at the U.S. Southern Border" because there have been a lot of reports of dogman activity or people that are crossing the border to come into our country who, from what I've been told, are getting attacked by what look like dogmen and stuff. So I don't know if there's any kind of connection to what Javier was referring to there. I don't know if that would be dogman. It sounds like it's more like people. Sounds like that's more like people in some sort of face paint, apparently. But
Well,
yeah,
I've heard
really
the
bad.
whole Dogman on the southern border thing.
Mhm.
I've heard numerous stories about that, but to validate it, I don't. You know, I haven't been able to validate anything. So I just I'm not gonna. I don't want to use the word interesting because it's always a terrible thing when people get harmed by something when they're
Yes.
just trying to do their thing. But you know, it is interesting. Um, but it is also at the same time a very, very terrible thing if that is happening.
Yes, it's a terrible thing. Yeah. Wow. Well, it's interesting though that speaking of the face painting and the war paint and having camouflage paint on their faces, that story kind of correlates a little bit. That they're saying that their people had paint on their faces. So, okay, we had a question earlier, and I don't know if I started. Let me see if it's still in here. But I think it was from John Fortman or Coco. It was the Fortman family, and I believe here it is. I don't know if we addressed this completely. It says, given this dog man made a mark that resembles a deer, do you think it was intentional camouflage or for hunting deer? I mean, do you think it was for hunting deer or to camouflage itself so that no one would suspect it was a deer?
You know, that's an interesting scenario, and I've asked myself, you know, what was it trying to do by utilizing that? Um, was it just trying to possibly camouflage itself from humans, or was it trying to actually hunt deer? Now, the interesting thing about it is, you know, with it being late in the evening like that, you know, deer will start to move later in the evening, right before dark, and then they'll continue to move after dark. You know, depends on a lot of it's got to do with moon phase, but and the visible light because you know deer actually see different than humans do at night or in general. So it could be, you know, I don't really have a definitive answer for that, but it could be either way, in my opinion.
It could be. Freaky Geek has a funny comment. You sure it's war paint, not them going out on a date? So yeah, I mean okay, so I do joke around about putting on my war paint when I put my makeup on. or like I said, or clown makeup, depends. I don't usually put on clown makeup, but you know, um, but yeah, okay. So putting on makeup, and we're talking about the magical aspects of this. I'm going to look at putting on makeup differently now because, you know, I unfortunately made the mistake of clicking on some video one day. It was in my Instagram feed, and it was like women that, I mean, they look absolutely beautiful and gorgeous, but then I guess they take their makeup off and they look like a completely different person. And it's like, what kind of magic was that? Okay, so, and that's serious. Like, it's serious. Like, you can, I remember, okay, I remember there was like some case out of, I'm going to say China, okay, where a woman got sued or something. I guess she got married. And I kind of remember this story from a long time ago, but I guess she had so much like plastic surgery or like makeup and stuff that when she had kids, like the husband got mad because he didn't know that she had all this surgery and stuff. So I don't know, this is surgery, it's not makeup, but you know, like he's like sued her because their kids weren't as pretty as he thought they were going to be. So I know that sounds terrible. It has nothing to do with the makeup, but it kind of does because it's like some sort of sorcery, right? Sorcery is the word. Sorcery. Um, putting someone in a, like, deceiving them. Let's just say deceiving people by, and I don't think that's why I'm like, you know, I try not to wear too much makeup because I don't want to not look like myself. Okay. Makeup should enhance, by the way, ladies. Okay. Should enhance, not overpower your features. Okay. But that's just my opinion. That's my opinion. That's what I use it for. So,
Well,
um,
you know, from the aspect of,
say,
you know, when you look at face paint, war paint, you know, it all deals with, like I said earlier, it's an internal, uh, it's an internal psychological, spiritual change that takes place within the person. You know, I mean, even if you look at it from the standpoint of like the military, you know, and I can attest because I was in the military. When you put on that camouflage face paint, you're like, "Uh-oh, it's time to be bad." You know,
I mean, look, you know, I could not leave this out. I had a whole lot of pictures to show tonight, and but you know, we're talking about different uses of face paint. I mean, we even have hunters. I mean, these types of face paint have names. Like they've got styles, like the commando, the crow, and the tiger. But it's not that much different than, okay, this is like a chart of some of the indigenous or Native American types of face paint, okay, to emulate animals. Okay, like the different animals. I can't see because my eyesight's not that great. Those are tiny letters, but there's like a goat and a horse and spiders and all this, you know. So I mean, there's not much difference here. You know, it's to camouflage. It could be to intimidate. It could be for power. Okay, it could be for all sorts of stuff. And then we got myself. I have a little bit of makeup on tonight. Okay, I'm not trying to deceive anybody. I'm just trying to make myself feel better, okay? And not scare you guys off, okay? Just kidding. I'm not trying to scare anybody, okay? So I put some powder on my face and a little lipstick. Um, but yeah, it's used for different purposes, but it can be very magical. I feel magical right now, okay? So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's better than feeling down on myself for not having makeup on. But nonetheless, um, I have not heard a whole lot of other stories personally from personal experiences. I have heard of stories online, and of course we had and I'm speaking of with humanoids or cryptids of some sort having war paint on. Other than Fred in Alaska, our friend Fred Roll has told stories, and he has recited some stories that he was told about the little people in Alaska. And I did a show not too long ago about the Incinerate people up in Alaska. And this is one of the pictures from some of the art that I did for the show. It looks like they have on masks. Okay, but I believe that they're known to wear face paint. It's almost like war paint. Tribal garb, tribal paint on their faces, and sometimes it's masks. But that's the most common story that I've heard would be from the little people wearing face paint. So yeah, and it's a little creepy. Those are creepy ones. Those are the creepy ones. But I can assume it'd be pretty creepy seeing a dog man that looked like a deer as well.
Oh
That
yeah.
looked
Well,
cartoonish.
initially seeing it, and then when it turned its head, I could see its full profile. I was like, "Well, okay." It was actually kind of shocking because I was expecting it to be a deer. That's how well it was camouflaged.
Hmm.
But the other interesting thing about it is it didn't act like a deer, because usually when a deer is standing up looking at you like that, he's gonna head up, head down, head up, head down, then he's gonna stomp to try
Okay.
to get you to move, because it's trying to figure out what you are, and it can't until you move,
Yeah.
especially if you're being still. So that was not saying that a deer has to do that. I mean, it could just stand there and look at you like that, but generally they're gonna, or you're gonna have the ear movement, and there was none of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I always find it interesting that you say it looked cartoonish, because when I have experienced, and I have had up close and personal encounters with cryptids. I guess you call them cryptids, like especially ETs. I've had at least 3 ETs within feet of me. Okay, and the thing about them is they did not move like anything I've ever seen before. So it was really hard to like kind of wrap my head around what I was looking at, because it's not natural in a human sense, or like an animal that we would know kind of sense. It was really odd. And cartoonish would be a good word for it. Okay, but I never use that term, cartoonish. Unnatural is the way I describe it. Okay, for the up close personal encounters that I've had. Hmm. Yeah, I've
Yeah,
never seen an
that's
ET.
the only way that I can describe it, actually. I mean, I don't know of any other way to to describe it. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously it looked, like it looked, but it kind of had a cartoonish kind of feel to it. It was like it was, I don't know. I don't know how to describe it.
when we talk about the matrix, right, we're talking about the matrix, like we create our own realities in a way too, but it's also three-dimensional and things are here. Okay, so they're here, but you said that it kind of disappeared. I mean, did it look holographic at all, or was it just solid? It was a solid 3D, three-dimensional being.
Yeah, it was definitely a solid 3D dimensional being. Um, but initially, when I saw its head, because when it got down and was crawling away, I couldn't see its head like it was when it was behind the bush. It just, I don't know, if for some reason it had kind of like a cartoonish kind of feel to it. I know I keep using that word, but that's what it looked like.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, nonetheless, it's really amazing that you got a good look at it. And so some people say that when you have an encounter with something like a dogman or a Bigfoot, you get marked. They call it being marked. Now, I just think that we are on a frequency with it, and you're on that same frequency at that time, and then you can continue to be on that frequency. I don't look at it as being marked, but do you think that maybe you got marked because you've had other encounters? If you had other encounters since then?
Well, there are a lot of things that I used to believe that I don't necessarily follow anymore, you know, and I'll be the first to tell everybody when I started Bigfoot research back in the day, I was 100% aper. I was an aper,
An ape.
but I was an aper. I
That's like
thought
a
it was,
primate in the woods. Only a primate in the
yeah.
woods. That's all it for the audience. If you're wondering what that means, when you're
I,
looking for Bigfoot, there's two camps. There's the primate in the woods camp, and then there's the wow. There's something different about these Bigfoots camp.
yeah.
There's some kind of supernatural element potentially.
And, you know, I thought it was just an undiscovered primate or whatever. And, but as time went on and um, I had different experiences, encountered different things, um, my understanding of these things shifted.
Yeah,
And I mean, don't get me wrong, I would love for it to be nothing but a undiscovered primate. Then then it would be easier to explain. Um, but
yeah,
it it changed my mind, and I will tell anybody and everybody, as even if they are the most hardcore aper or flesh and blood Bigfoot believer, and they're nothing against the person for holding those beliefs, but I guarantee you that if they've been doing Bigfoot research for any amount of time and they claim that they've never experienced anything out of the ordinary in the woods, then either A, they're lying, or B, they're not out there in the woods. Because
exactly.
if you're out there in the woods and you're putting in, you know, time out there, you are going to experience something out of the ordinary relating to these things. And that's just the truth of it. And it could also be they're in denial of what they experienced, because I went through a phase like that myself where I experienced some odd things, and I was like, uh was it that, or was I misperceiving? Am I losing my mind? You go through that whole mindset where you're like, no one's going to believe this, so but yeah, I mean, that's the truth of it. As far as research goes, if a if a person that's a flesh and blood person does not experience something weird at least once, you know, there's something wrong with that scenario, because I know a lot of researchers, and I know a lot of people from both sides, and uh, yeah,
I just wait for people to come around. I just wait. I wait patiently because whenever I we have I'm going to say we have it used to be like half or more of the community when I first went public was like into and I got called crazy. Okay, I my name was put out there like, oh, she's a remote viewer and into the woo. Okay, stuff. Okay, so and your point, yes, I am. And I came out guns blazing, and I wasn't ashamed of it because I had been doing research for over 10 years, and that's what I had experienced. So I wasn't just like theoretically speaking, I was living it. Okay, so I had seen it and I wasn't ashamed of it. Okay. But and so now when I do encounter people who and I don't really encounter people like that anymore. Most people do know that there's something else out there. And so I don't encounter a whole lot of just primate in the woods people anymore. Maybe I repel them. I'm just kidding. But but yeah, it's people there's a lot less of that camp now. And you do notice, Mark, people that are in that camp are usually the people that have just gotten into Bigfooting too. So it just takes time. Not always, but sometimes there are people that just got into it. So as
Well,
opposed to people who have been in it for a while.
there's some diehards out there, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
and nothing against them. They're good people, just like you know, I mean, it's just like people are people. You
Yeah.
know, they're entitled to their belief, and you
Totally.
know the whole thing with it is, and that's why part of the reason why a lot of the time I don't really talk about a lot of the things that I've experienced, and the reason for that is because at the end of the day, I can sit here and tell you every experience I've ever had, and you're probably going to walk away from that and either think it's cool or that you know, I need the minute with the van and the white coats to come get me.
Right.
But on the flip side of that, the only thing that's going to really solidify anything for anybody is, and this is one thing that I've been a strong proponent of since the beginning, is don't listen to what I have to say about anything. Go out there. If you want to understand and learn, go out there and figure it out for yourself, because that's the only thing that's going to change anybody's mind, their opinion, or their belief in any of this stuff is to experience these things. And with that, you know, I always tell people also to be careful about what they wish for, because you just might get it. And it, you know, I think it's important that we understand that there's potentially multiple things that we're dealing with out there, um, that could be something natural, could be something. You know, I I can't remember who it was. Was it you, Jessica, that asked me about the types of dog men? Are they naturally occurring? Or are they you know uh,
Lab made, lab
lab
grown.
made, lab
Yeah.
grown, or you know whatever?
ETs.
I actually think that there's possibly three different types. You have the ones that have been around forever, that either live, inner Earth or alternate dimension or whatever. Then you have the ones that are, genetically engineered, and then you have the ones that are the result of dark magic. And each one has its own different way of interacting with humans. And I think that things like that are important to be observed, because, if a person says, "Oh, well, I want to see a dog man," and they go out looking for it, what are they going to get when they run into it? Well, you have off the bat, you have three at a minimum possible avenues of approach, and you can't always determine how an interaction is going to go. i- You know, in with anything. I mean, interactions are very unpredictable. That's just
Yeah.
human existence. I mean, we get that with people. You never know how an interaction is going to go with somebody that you're talking to.
No.
You could be talking about whatever, you know, Reese cups or whatever, and they may go berserk.
Yeah, you never know. Trust me. I know that all too well. Things can go south quick. So you're 100% right. Wow. Man, we have some of the best comments in here tonight. And I want to take a second and before I forget, I want to thank everybody who's been giving super stickers tonight. I know that I didn't want to stop the flow of what we were talking about. So I want to thank April and Mojo too for the super stickers. And also Kathleen Michael, thank you very much. And Cat Chaser too. And I know War Criminal, you gave us one earlier. So thank you so much. You guys are much appreciated for that. So before I forgot. I needed to bring that up. So thank y'all so much. But yeah, you never know what you're gonna get. So be careful what you ask for, everybody. That is a very good takeaway. amongst all the other takeaways we've got for the show tonight, because there are people that are becoming a little more cutting edge out in the field, and are going out there for the extreme experience. And so I just urge everybody to be very careful. I'm not discouraging anybody from doing what they want to do, but just be real careful. Just be mindful of, because once something happens, if you do go out there and you do happen to open up a portal because you mean to or by accident, you don't know. I mean, that portal, there are people that live around those areas, and there are campers, and there are families that take their children around those areas, most likely. And if there's an open portal and things are coming in and out of it, it's not safe for the well-being of the families. And I'm a mom that has a kid. I go into the national parks a lot, and so it just makes it a little more, I'm going to say sinister, a little more dangerous for people out there. And you live beside an area that gets a lot of activity, Mark. So we just got to be mindful of what we're doing. That's all.
Yeah, and something I was going to mention earlier, and I hate to say this, when you were asking me about do I research over there by myself
Mhm.
and all that, you know, eh, the the LBL has got so much publicity, and I used to enjoy going over there, but um, not so much anymore because I don't know. It's just it's the same place. It's just got a I don't know.
Yeah.
The vibe has changed, and there is a reason why the vibe has changed, and that change is not because of me. Um, and that's pretty much probably the best way that I should leave that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you're not, I know you're not going to stop doing your research and stuff though. And there's places all over the country that have amazing, just great activity going down. And there's still so much to learn. There's so much to learn. There's so much to explore. And I am just tickled to death that you came on the show tonight and talked about your experience, Mark. It
Well,
really means the world to me that you came out and did this with us tonight. So thank you.
well, thank you for having me as a guest tonight and giving me the opportunity to share a little bit. And I don't claim to know everything. I don't claim to even know a little bit, but um, I have I have experienced quite a few odd things, and if I can help somebody, stay out of trouble or uh, lean more towards doing the right thing, then I'm game for it.
Yeah. Jay Truesticker, that's a great comment. If you open a portal, don't do it in a national park. Do it instead in a forgotten, unknown pet cemetery. Yeah, those are words of wisdom. Words of wisdom. Yeah,
and then
that's great.
and then you got Pet Cemetery all over again.
Oh my
and
gosh,
so
I know. Well, I
and,
mean,
and I'm laughing because because Pet Cemetery was one of the books that I was real big into reading when I was younger. For some reason, that book just in enthralled me and intrigued me.
yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, from the very get-go tonight, I mean, I got vibes of like, what is that movie, Poltergeist? Where they stirred up the all the spirits and everything, where they had built the subdivision, like the houses on top of a sacred burial mound. And so I thought about that movie when we started the show tonight, and now we're ending it off with me thinking of Pet Cemetery. So yeah, good old movies that traumatized me as a kid, for sure.
Oh
But
yeah.
it's real life. This is like real life stuff. Who'd have thunk it, man? Who'd have thought? I didn't think I'd ever be like when I was a kid, I wasn't thinking I was gonna be living this as an adult, living these movies basically, some of the scary movies. But I wouldn't have it
Yeah,
any other way.
I don't that's why I don't really watch
That's
a lot
cool.
of scary movies because they just they just don't do anything for me. Not when I've lived the craziness that I've experienced. You know, it's different when you experience a lot of things, and then you try to go back and watch scary movies. It's just
It's not scary anymore, is it?
yeah, it,
Yeah. It's not scary. There's not, I know it's like we don't need horror movies. We're out in the wood chasing Bigfoots and getting chased by dogmen and stuff. You're having experiences with cryptids with like basically like war paint on their faces and stuff. It's like, I mean, if you told that to the normal person walking on the street, they'd look at you like you were crazy, but we have this community here where, my goodness, thank goodness we have a community. We can come talk about this stuff and have similar experiences all together here. So it means a lot. And we've also war criminals in the chat tonight too. And I know he goes out there with you and stuff. So I hope you guys will be super safe next
oh
time you're
yeah,
out there at the LBL. Yeah.
yeah. War criminal is a pretty good dude. I like him.
Nice. Awesome. Well, we got a lot of really good, cool, good dudes in the chat and ladies and gents in here. And I want to thank everybody so much for being here tonight and hanging out with Mark and I on your Saturday night. Man, I'm actually digging these Saturday night shows. It's a lot of
Cool.
fun. So yeah, having a great time. Yeah, Mark, someone in the audience was asking, where can they find you? Do you have a YouTube channel and a website?
I do have a YouTube channel. Actually, I have it linked on my website, which is cryptidville.com. And you can also search for Cryptidville in YouTube, and I'm sure it will come up. It will have the green uh, street sign logo, as I call it, that says "Welcome to Cryptidville." And yeah,
Awesome. Yeah, you guys go over there and subscribe to his channel. And yeah, Mark, I hope you'll come back and hang out with me again. This is always a ton of fun.
yeah,
And
I,
yeah,
I would love to.
okay, perfect. Well, awesome. Okay, well, everybody, I hope you guys will come back and see me tomorrow night. I'll be at Spaced Out Radio. I have Robbie Rains coming on as my guest tomorrow night. He was actually at the LBL last weekend. And so we're actually going to be talking about some of his experiences that he and his crew had out there. So we're going to be talking about a double dose of LBL this weekend. And Mark, do you have any final words or any final thoughts for the audience tonight before we go?
I guess my final thought would be this: um, if you're going to engage in research, try to engage in um, ethical, objective research, and above all else, if you do this one little thing, you don't have anything to worry about, and that is to be honest. And
Honesty and integrity.
that's my final thought. And that's something that was instilled in me in my early starting years by a gentleman that many people in the community may or may not remember. His name was Jim Keegan. Uh, he was a researcher out of the the Eastern Seaboard, and that was something that he instilled in me early on. Was to be as honest and uh, truthful as you can be, because if you know and it's not so much um, well, it is what it is.
It is what it is. That's one of my favorite quotes. It is what it is. It is what it is. Yeah. Well, words of wisdom. I appreciate that. Okay. Well, Mark, thank you again for being here tonight. And
Thank you.
you guys, man, this has been awesome. I hope you guys learned something. I hope everybody here learned something. I know I always do on all of these shows. And so if it you don't take anything else away from the show, which I know y'all take a whole lot of stuff away. Y'all be safe out there. Okay, be safe out there, and just be aware of your surroundings. And have fun. Don't live in fear. Don't live in fear. And have some integrity and honesty when you're doing it. Okay. And but have fun more than anything. Okay. All right, Mark. Well, have a wonderful night. I will see you guys
You too.
tomorrow night. Oh, and thank you, Susan Kano, too, for that super sticker. You got there just when I was about to close. I love it. Thank you so much. That is so sweet. I want to thank everybody for all your support. If you guys would like to become a member of my channel, go to the main page on my YouTube channel and hit the join button. And I put exclusive content out there for all of my members. So I shout out to all my members. It's everybody in the chat that has a star by their name. Those are some of my members. So thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. And Mark, take care. Thank you so much
You
for being
too.
here.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
We'll do this again soon. Okay.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, y'all. Lock your doors. Stay safe out there. And I'll see y'all tomorrow night. Bye, y'all.